Welcome to the Artemis mission status briefing. Our event should begin momentarily. If you are monitoring the event video, please mute the audio on your TV or computer and listen only to audio from the phone. If you would like to ask a question during the Q&A portion of the briefing, please press star 1 to be added to the queue. If you would like to withdraw your question, press star 2.
Qué alegría que estén todos acá. Bueno, vamos ya a poner la pantalla de inicio. Estamos como prensa, estamos acreditados como prensa. Va a estar el administrador de NASA, Bill Nelson. Hay 2 o 3 personas más en esta conferencia de hoy. Recuerden, el audio que escuchen va a estar desfasado con el video que vean. El video que está aquí, que va a aparecer aquí, viene por internet. Y nosotros estamos conectados vía telefónica con la conferencia de prensa que nos llega antes. Entonces, no queda. Saludo a todos, gracias. Luego hablamos. Vamos a ver, esperemos que empiecen. A ver si sigo teniendo comunicación todavía. Sí, sigo teniendo comunicación. Claro, no se escucha nada, ¿no? Sí, mi música sí, pero qué raro que NASA no tiene música en el teléfono. Vamos a revisar por las dudas que no haya un atraso. Bastante normal. No está Bill Nelson en las conferencias últimamente, ¿no? No tengo ningún mail. Bueno, ¿de qué se trata esta conferencia? Vamos a bajar un poquito la música. ¿De qué se trata la conferencia esta? La nave Orión está en la mitad de su misión. Llegó al punto más lejos en el espacio profundo de lo que jamás ninguna nave con posibilidad humana haya estado. Son 435.000 kilómetros. Un poco más todavía que eso. Está batiendo récords. En lo que es la órbita retrógrada lunar de profunda. Eso es lo que significa DRO, que tanto se ha escrito. La idea es que la NASA nos dé una conferencia de prensa informativo en vivo sobre esto. Como ya dije, va a estar Bill Nelson, el administrador de NASA. Va a estar el gerente de la misión Artemis, Mike Serafin. Va a estar Rick Labrod, que es el director de vuelo de NASA Johnson. Y Howard Hughes, el director del programa Orion de NASA Johnson también. Todos los grandes. Obviamente, la prensa grande no le está dando mucho tiempo a esto, porque ya pasó. Lo importante era el lanzamiento de ese cohete y, en fin, qué es lo que vende si fallaba. Ahora para ellos es un poco aburrido esto, pero no deja de ser un evento histórico. que esa nave Orión esté tan lejos y esté en esa órbita DRO. Bueno, ahora sí apareció la música de NASA, ¿eh? Ahora sí.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining our briefing today. Welcome to Flight Day 13 of the Artemis I mission, now halfway into this 25-and-a-half-day mission. Another milestone reached today as Orion reached its maximum distance from the Earth. And to tell us a little bit about the systems on the spacecraft and how the mission is going so far, we have a
Bueno,
panel
están
of
diciendo
speakers
lo que ya
joining us from
dijimos
NASA
hace unos
headquarters.
minutos.
We have NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. And here at Johnson Space Center, I'm joined in the room by
Leah
Mike
Chesser
Garrison,
está
Artemis
ahí,
I
ella es
mission
Leah
manager,
Chesser.
Rick LeBrode, Artemis I Flight Director, Howard Hugh, Orion Program
Bueno, y
Manager,
está presentando
and
a
Vanessa
cada
White,
uno de los que
Center
están,
Director at
tal cual
Johnson
como
Space
habíamos
Center.
hablado hace un par de
Again, thank you for
minutos.
joining us. We have some media here in the room as well as on the phone. Ahead of taking questions today, just a reminder, you can press *1 to raise your hand in the phone to ask a question and press *2
Bueno, ahí
to lower
tenemos
your hand if your
en
question has been
primer
answered.
plano a Bill
Now, before we
Nelson.
get to those, we're going to turn it over to NASA Administrator Bill Nelson for some opening remarks.
¿Qué es lo que dice Bill?
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Well, the
Gracias,
NASA
hola.
teams have been very busy over this holiday
Bueno,
weekend.
los equipos de NASA, a pesar de que estamos en vacaciones, han estado muy, muy ocupados en esta experiencia, ¿no?
Artemis I has had extraordinary success and is
Ha tenido un
completed
éxito bárbaro,
a series of
Artemis I,
history-making events. So,
en
for
todos estos
example, on
eventos.
Friday, for the first time, a human-rated spacecraft successfully entered that orbit for
Bueno,
Artemis
cuando,
I called the
cuando el
distant
viernes pasado,
retrograde orbit.
Orión entró en
Then
esa
on
órbita,
Saturday,
¿no?
Orion surpassed the distance record for a mission with a
Y el
spacecraft
sábado fue
designed
que
to carry
pasó en la
humans
distancia de
into
récord, ¿no?
deep space.
En una nave
That
que está
record
pronta para llevar
before had
humanas.
been set by Apollo 13 at about 248,000 miles from Earth. And just over an hour ago, Orion set another record, clocking its maximum distance from Earth, 270,000 miles. And of course, Artemis builds on Apollo. Not only are we going farther and coming home faster, but
Bueno,
Artemis
y ahora
is
dice, con esta
paving the way
misión,
to live
no solo
and
eso, sino
work
que vamos a
in
llegar
deep space
más
in a hostile environment
rápido a Tierra. Claro,
invent to
esta nave va a
create
ingresar al doble
and
de lo que
ultimately
de lo
to
que
go
se
on with
ingresa
humans to
normalmente
Mars.
desde la Estación
Now,
Espacial
since the
Internacional, ¿no?
launch, we have been receiving critical data back, and there's a lot more to come. For example, many of us know Arturo Campos was a NASA engineer who developed a plan to bring the crippled Apollo 13 crew home safely. For a mission that something terribly went wrong, it's looked in the annals of NASA as one of the most successful missions because they saved the crew.
Bueno, estaba comparando lo que sucedió con el Apolo 13, que dice que a pesar de que hubo problemas, dice fue la misión con más éxito porque NASA consiguió salvar a la tripulación.
Is a somewhat what we would call a mannequin, a moonican.
Bueno, está hablando del maniquí que lleva arriba a bordo para grabar todos los datos como si hubiera un humano a bordo, ¿no? Y todos esos datos van a seguir el legado de Campos, que es el nombre del funcionario de NASA, en honor a quién tiene el nombre el maniquí ese, ¿no?
After the launch is the reentry, because we want to know that that heat shield works
Bueno,
at about
lo próximo que viene,
5,000
dice,
degrees Fahrenheit,
el próximo paso grande
almost
es la entrada,
half
porque ahí
as
vamos a
hot
poder
as the
probar
sun.
el escudo
Coming in at
térmico,
32 Mach. It's going
32
to
veces la
loop the
velocidad del sonido,
atmosphere at about
Mach
200,000,
32.
well, at the ultimate entry point, and then it's going to dip down about 200,000 feet into the upper atmosphere at that 25,000 miles an hour. And then it's going to pull up and it's going to bleed off some of that speed to about Mach 22, 17,000 miles an hour. We've already learned a lot.
Hemos
And
aprendido
this
mucho.
team's resilience is just unbelievable.
Y la resiliencia
And
de estos
it's
equipos
incredible how
de NASA, la
smoothly
verdad,
the
es
mission's
increíble.
gone. But it is a test.
Pero
And that's what we
esta
do.
misión
We
es un
stress it
test.
and we
Y es lo
test
que
it.
hacemos. Estresamos la
And
nave,
Orion comes
estresamos
home on
el
the
cohete y
11th
la
of
misión a los
December,
límites.
splashing down in a couple of weeks. We look forward to learning
Ángel,
what
estás
all
muy
those
negativo hoy, me
sensors
parece.
will have told us in order to be able to put 4 human beings on the top of Artemis II. And then we're going
Bueno,
to the moon.
de esto se
into
trata
lunar orbit
justamente
in
de
preparation
preparar
for
esto para en el
Artemis
Artemis II llevar
where
tripulantes
we will
y
have
luego en
4
el
go
3
into a
poder ir a la
lunar
Luna mismo, ¿no? O sea,
polar elliptical orbit that will then have 2 of the astronauts in the lander go
bueno, y
down to
poder
the
hacer una
surface.
órbita
That will be
elíptica
first
polar
woman
para
in the
poder llevar
next
ese
man.
aterrizador lunar
So
a la
let me turn
superficie
it over
lunar, ¿eh?
to Vanessa Weiss.
Vamos
Vanessa
te voy a
is our
pasar a
great
Vanessa
director
Weiss,
out there at the Johnson Space
que no
Center.
estaba,
Hey,
Vanessa es la
Vanessa,
directora del
take
Centro
it away.
Espacial Johnson, no estaba en la lista de los que iban a
Okay,
estar hoy.
well, thank you, Administrator
Ahí la
Nelson.
vemos a
And I
Vanessa.
believe we have a video that we're
Pero
going to
no,
play.
todavía
So
no
we're going to play
apareció en
that
el
video
directo,
first.
que la estamos escuchando. Nos va a mostrar un video. Ahí a la derecha tenemos a Vanessa. Lamentablemente,
We have a video that we're going to play, so we're going to play that video first.
vamos a ver el video primero, dice, ¿no? Bueno. Esto es lo que estábamos escuchando hoy, el despegue del SLS. Estamos con el audio separado. Vamos a poner un poquitito acá. Pero la música, la verdad, no puedo colocarlo. No puedo colocar la música porque me banea la misma NASA después. Están usando música con copyrights. Las primeras imágenes de la Tierra, desde Orión. La verdad que hay un montón de fotos espectaculares en Flickr. Le voy a dejar el enlace para que los puedan ver. La verdad están increíbles. Todas estas fotos están en altísima calidad, en 20 megapíxeles. Si quieren las pueden bajar desde ese sitio Flickr.
Had an opportunity to talk with many of the members of the flight control team, people in the support rooms, back rooms, and thank them for their work. But now isn't a chance for me to publicly say thank you.
Bueno, he tenido la oportunidad, dice Vanessa, de hablar con un montón de gente de las salas de control y de todos sitios, pero en este momento es el momento de hacer ese agradecimiento público, dice, ¿no?
The mission is just going completely flawless. Of course, we're learning. There's things that we have to, figure out about the systems themselves. But, Orion is just performing so very well. This is a chance for us to talk about the fact that with Orion today being a spacecraft that is in lunar orbit, we also have a spacecraft, the International Space Station, that's in LEO. So right now our teams are controlling 2 spacecraft. And it's just amazing, the accomplishments that we've had, and many more to come. But with the Artemis program, as the administrator said, right here at the Johnson Space Center, we're just super proud of the Orion. We're also
Estamos muy
working on the Gateway, which will be a
orgullosos
platform, in
de
the lunar
Orión
vicinity.
y
We're
obviamente
building
también
suits, we're
de cómo
building
viene el
rovers,
progreso
we're working
de
with the
Orión y
Marshall
los
Space
rovers
Flight
que se están
Center on the
fabricando.
lander, all of that so that we can continue to explore with our astronauts going into space. This mission is just a great success. It's the beginning. It will allow us to do Artemis II, where we will put our astronauts
Esta
on
misión
board.
ya es un gran
The
éxito
tests that are going on
y nos va a
today.
permitir
You're going to
seguir
hear the
adelante
mission
con
management
Artemis
team,
II.
because Orion's performing so well. They are adding new test objectives to the mission. So that's a great thing. That lets you know that right now we're learning about this vehicle and preparing
Estamos
for going
aprendiendo
forward into
mucho de
the
este
future.
vehículo. ¿Y a qué se refiere con
I
eso?
also just
Bueno,
want to share
hoy hicieron
that,
unos encendidos de motor,
right
que no lo está
now
diciendo
we
ella
have
ahora, lo digo
spent,
yo, para
past
probar
weekend celebrating
los
space
seguidores
living,
estelares, los
and our flight
navegadores
control
estelares
teams did
y
get
los
an
motores de
opportunity to
reacción,
celebrate
cómo
Thanksgiving.
funcionaban unos con otros.
And just
¿Qué es lo
want
que
to say
hacen con
again,
eso? Bueno,
thank
toman
you to
la
all of
medida
the
de
people
cuánto
that
se
made
debía a
this
la nave,
possible.
cuánta
It takes
potencia le
many,
dieron
many
y cómo
people
se
all
comporta
around the
para
world to
futuras
make this happen.
correcciones,
And
para
with
poder
that,
corregir el
I'd like to say
software.
thank you to each and every one of you. You're doing a great job, gentlemen.
Thank you, Vanessa. And for additional opening remarks, we'll turn it over to Artemis Mission Manager, Mike Serafin.
Bueno, Mike Serafín va a hablar ahora después de Vanessa. Si alguien tiene una pregunta, la hace en el chat y si vemos, podemos transmitirla, podemos hacérsela a ellos.
Flight day 13 of our 26-day marathon. As Vanessa mentioned, we are looking at adding additional objectives, and the halfway
Él
point
es Mike
in
Serafín.
this mission allows us and affords us an opportunity to step back and look at what our margins are and where we could be a little smarter to buy down risk and understand the spacecraft's performance for crewed flight on the very next mission. So this halfway point teaches us to number our days so that we can get a heart of wisdom, and adding 7 new objectives above the baseline that we agreed on
Como 7 objetivos
to further
nuevos ahora.
characterize the thermal environment, but also the propulsion system allows us to again get smarter for crewed flight. In terms of mission status, we are
En términos de la misión, del estado de la misión, continuamos con lo que es la misión. Pasamos el punto de la mitad en términos de tiempo y justamente llegamos al punto más lejos, ¿no? Si miramos hacia atrás, vamos a demostrar el reingreso del vehículo. Volviendo atrás, este vehículo nos puso en el punto de transición, en el punto de inyección lunar, el SLS. Muy buena pregunta, Walter, vamos a hacerla.
We are 25% complete, so we've got 31 of the 124 baseline objectives complete. We have 37.5% of those objectives.
After the tone, please state your name.
Daniel Regueira.
Thank you.
In the post-splashdown time frame. So adding the 7, what we're calling real-time objectives, adds above and beyond that 124 objective content in terms of priorities 2 and 4. And then priority 3, retrieving the spacecraft, we will again achieve that on entry and splashdown and recovery day. We are starting our initial preparations for deployment of the recovery forces out at Naval Base San Diego. Our Exploration Ground Systems-led recovery operations team in the U.S. Navy have begun their preparations for what they call just-in-time training, and they are going to deploy tomorrow for that training and then come back to shore and then set up for recovery. In terms of the mission management team, we did meet, since the last time I was here to talk to you, we did meet on Tuesday, November the 22nd. It was a non-decisional meeting, 45 minutes, and we just largely statused the progress of the mission. We also met on Wednesday, November the 23rd. Again, that was largely a non-decisional meeting. We did go through the imagery findings to date, and we did discuss those, and there were no imagery findings of consequence through our integrated imagery team. And then the mission management team was off Thursday, November the 24th through Sunday, the 27th, largely because the mission is proceeding so well, and none of the anomalies or funnies that are out there are of consequence. We did meet today for 2 hours. It was a decisional meeting. We did close one of our anomaly resolution teams associated with the star trackers and the random access memory built-in test hardware that we're seeing a number of funnies on, and we essentially concluded that the hardware is performing as expected, and this is really just a byproduct of the flight environment. And then we did approve 2 flight rule waivers associated with setting up for the additional flight test objectives, and those will enable us to set up the initial conditions for that. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Leah.
Thanks, Mike. And I will pass it over to Rick Lebrode, Artemis I Flight Director.
All right, thank you very much. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be here to give you a status on how well things are going. It's always a lot easier when things are going so well. I think I want to start with I have a graphic that shows that you've seen before. It's the mission trajectory. So if you could put that up, please. It's pretty straightforward. We're halfway in the mission, so you figure we're halfway through the DRO. So I don't know if we got that. Okay. There we go. And if you look at number 11, which is essentially, like I said, halfway into the DRO, that's where Orion.
Director de vuelo líder de Artemis I, Rick
The
Lebrode.
imagery was crazy. You saw that the imagery and that opening video clip, and I can tell you, I was in the control center at the console for a majority of those images, the ones that include the Earth and the Moon, and it's
Bueno, nos están mostrando qué es lo que ha hecho y qué es lo que está haciendo la nave Orión ahora.
So I'll just give you kind of a status on where we are. Mike talked a little bit about, we're just clicking off our detailed flight test objectives. Everything's going extremely well. Going so well that we're working with Howard and his team, the engineering team, and the European partners to add more test objectives. If you recall,
teóricamente están en esta fase.
I talked about, the simple question was, why are we flying the flight, or what do we want to try and accomplish? And up to this mission, everything was just test data. So a lot of our models that the engineering team uses for their analysis, they're using just data, figures and test information. Well, the effort that we're doing now to get this real-time performance data from the vehicle and the environment is that valuable data that's going to be put into the test, update the models to allow us to know exactly how this vehicle is going to operate, and it'll relieve us of a lot of our constraints. A lot of these objectives are going to be, the thermal environment. Try to expand the thermal environment. Right now we're constrained to we can get out of the tail to sun attitude for upwards of 3 hours, but when we come back, we have to wait 10 hours before we can do another excursion. So we're hoping to get more information, get smarter on how the vehicle thermally responds, to give us more flexibility, and that'll be directly.
Está hablando sobre la respuesta térmica del vehículo.
Flying the crew. Let's see, for the mission to complete the trajectory, we had planned for 19 translational burns. Up to this point, we've done 9, and it's been
Dice que planificaron para
every one
hacer
of Orion's propulsion systems. We've done 3 larger burns greater than 100 feet per second using the orbital maneuvering system.
Está hablando de la cantidad de encendidos que tienen planificado hacer justamente para salir de esta órbita y ingresar para el regreso.
Reaction control system, RCS system, and those were all less than 1 foot per second. And we did 2 of those burns where we actually maneuvered into attitude, the specific attitude, and thrust in a specific direction. And the last one we did was it was a very small burn, but we did it multi-axis, where you don't even have to maneuver to the attitude. So it was a great test of Orion propulsion capabilities. We were going to do a burn.
Han probado todas las posibilidades de propulsión de Orión.
It was a very small burn. We opted not to do it.
Está hablando de
And part of the
lo que
reason
hicieron
also is
hoy, que yo
because,
hablaba de
when we
justamente
do
el
our
sistema de
next,
navegación.
orbit maintenance number 3, which is in a couple of days, we want to. This is one of those test objectives that we're adding, and that's we want to burn the plus X. The
Bueno,
auxiliary
Ángel nos dice
thrusters
quiénes
for
son
100 seconds.
la tripulación del Shenzhou 15 que va a lanzar mañana. Vamos a ver si lo transmitimos, obviamente. Yo había leído que uno de ellos aparentemente era el que ya estaba y hubo cambios en la tripulación, que no hay nada confirmado, son todos rumores, obviamente, porque aparte confirman sobre último minuto, pero hay diferencias en la fotografía de los tripulantes chinos que evidencian que evidentemente hubo algún cambio de último momento. Y posiblemente sea gente que iba a ir en la próxima misión y los adelantaron o bajaron a 2.
And that again, when we fly by the moon, will be 80 miles off the surface. So we should expect to get some more spectacular imagery of the moon as we fly by.
Bueno, dice que van a pasar de 80 millas de la Luna cuando pasen cerca y va a haber imágenes espectaculares. Creo que van a pasar por el lado brillante.
And I will turn it over to Howard Hugh, Orion Program Manager.
Y ahora hablar Howard Hugh del programa Orión.
I'll start with thanking Mr. Nelson and Senator Director Weiss for recognizing the team. Certainly it's very tough working during the holiday and missing some time with the family and friends, but the team performed tremendously. I want to thank the flight control team, our engineering team, and our European partners, our Lockheed contractors, who worked tirelessly to make these burns.
Bueno, está hablando de la cantidad de gente que ha seguido trabajando a pesar de las vacaciones. No nos olvidemos que hubo el Día de Acción de Gracias en Estados Unidos, que es uno de los días festivos más importantes del año, donde todo el mundo viaja, se toma todo el mundo esos días y encima de eso hay gente que sigue trabajando en NASA porque está ligada a esta misión, obviamente, ¿no?
For the spacecraft. Of course, you know, you've heard from Mike and Rick that the spacecraft is operating just tremendously well so far, and we're really
bueno, ya sabemos que el equipo anda bárbaro, ¿no?
Across all the subsystem areas, and we've been able to accomplish other what we call detailed flight test objectives as well as we've gone along the mission, and we're going to try to accomplish some more in this DRO orbit. And I think it's a testament to not only the spacecraft capabilities and the performance so far of the spacecraft, but also the team. The team has been doing a great job not only monitoring our spacecraft and looking at some of the funnies and making sure it's performing as expected, but also looking at opportunities to further along test this very important mission and the spacecraft that we have to further future missions and buy down future risks as we put crew on board. And I think that's a great opportunity that we have today in the DRO. I would say that also, I mentioned last time we were here, our performance across the boards continues to be outstanding relative to power we're generating, continue to generate 20% more power than we really need. We still have tremendous amount of propulsive capability or reserves in the prop tanks, excuse me. And we certainly are looking at other performance measurements across the board, across the spacecraft, and those are all going very well. So really happy where we are, halfway through the mission, looking forward to
muy contentos con cómo va la misión, mirando hacia adelante, poder traer la nave con seguridad a casa.
We will now move into the question and answer portion of our session. So a reminder, if you're online, please use the *1 to raise your hand if you have a question to ask, and *2 if your question has been answered. We will start here in the room.
Bueno, empiezan las preguntas y respuestas, ¿eh?
Thank you, Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. I know I'm leaning forward a little bit, but I'm wondering if you've received enough significant data from this mission so far that you can maybe update your planning dates for Artemis II and III, even, you know, an estimate or a season or a month or a year or...
Está pidiendo una estima del Artemis III. Y ahí tenemos a la derecha a Eric Berger de Ars Technica también. No falta ninguna conferencia.
We know that we need to refly some of the components from the Artemis I vehicle on the Artemis II vehicle. and we're looking at the detailed schedules there. It's a little bit.
Hay muchas cosas del Artemis I que tenemos que probarlo en el 2.
Today in the mission management team about how the avionics boxes are performing that we plan to refly, and they are performing very well. I don't know, Howard, if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I would say that to add on what Mike's saying, I think it's really good that we're looking at and getting all this data, especially with the avionics boxes we need for Artemis 2 from Artemis 1. So we'll be making sure those get off the vehicle when we splash down safely and get the Artemis 1 crew module back. That will go into our Artemis 2 spacecraft. For Artemis 2, we're also right now in the flow, so we're working very hard to go as fast as we can. And we're learning a lot from our obvious Artemis 1 flow, and we'll incorporate those lessons learned into our Artemis 2. We still have a lot of testing ahead with the Artemis 2 spacecraft, both the crew module and the service module that we need to accomplish. And I think after this mission, as the boxes come back from Artemis 1 and put on board Artemis 2, at the agency level, we'll be reviewing all our schedules across the board and stitching those together. So that's where we stand today.
Yeah, and Mark, the only other point that I would add is, if you come back to our priority 3 objective, which is retrieve the spacecraft for programmatic cost savings and avionics reuse, that is baked into that retrieve the spacecraft objective. We had to work our way through a number of challenges just to get to launch, and we had a variable mission duration, and we couldn't anchor the schedule activities until we got through the hydrogen leak challenges that we had, and the hurricane, and a whole host of other things, and then the launch date anchored which class of mission we were flying, and we are on a short class mission, a 26-day mission. So we're taking that into consideration now, and we're starting to work that into our schedules.
Bueno, no dijo nada en realidad de cuando tengamos otra fecha, lo vamos a decir.
Won't be able to join us for the question and answer portion. And then just a reminder to our media to please state your name and affiliation and to whom your question is addressed. So with that, back to the room.
Thanks very much. Eric Berger with Ars Technica. 2 questions. First of all, for Mike, I think you talked about priority 1 objectives, and I'm just curious how much of the overall risk at this point you've retired. You've gone through launch, obviously. MMOD is looking pretty good, or was as of the last briefing. The 3 different classes of thrusters on Orion seem to be performing pretty well. So, landing is kind of the main objective left. So is that 50% of the risk, 75, 25? Just trying to get a sense of where your primary concerns are in terms of sort of overall risk retired. And Howard, there was a blog post about a loss of comms several days ago with Orion. I'm just wondering what the resolution of that issue was, and if that's something to be concerned about going forward.
Okay, I'll start, Howard, and you want to follow up on the blog post?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, thank you for the question, Eric. In terms of risk that's retired, we did talk pre-flight about the Pareto chart, which identifies our top risk drivers. Certainly, micrometeoroid and orbital debris, which is our top risk driver, is in play until we get out of the space environment. But being halfway through the mission puts us roughly halfway through that risk, because it is a function or a byproduct of how long we're in the spaceflight environment. We had other risks associated with first-time flight of the rocket and the overall system performance of the rocket, the integrated avionics and software risk, and RS-25 engine. All of those have been retired. We have a demonstrated rocket. In terms of the spacecraft, some of those have been bought down, but some of them are not going to be retired from a mission standpoint until we get to landing day, specifically the parachute and parachute deploy system, and then the heat shield. So that, again, comes back to our priority 1 objective.
Nuestra prioridad sigue justamente hasta que se abran los paracaídas y esta nave aterrice en el mes próximo.
The overall system performance, and I think we are buying down some of that. So that's kind of a, if you're looking at our top 10 risk drivers, some of them have been retired, some of them are still in play, and some of them won't be realized for good or bad until we get to entry, descent, and splashdown day. and I'll turn it over to Howard for the blog question.
Yeah, Eric, I'm not sure specifically which comm outage you're referring to, but I'm going to ask Rick to talk about, we've had some ground comm issues, not on board, but I'll let Rick go first.
Yeah, so if it's the one I believe you're thinking about, you know, in order to make sure we get comm, enable comm from the vehicle,
Rubén dice que hay comandos que no funcionan.
has to send a command to get the onboard comm system configured, and then the ground controller, also flight control position and mission control, coordinates with the deep space network engineers, gives them what the configuration of the vehicles can be. Then they actually load the parameters to configure their network to support it. So it's complex. And we've changed things since the beginning of the mission is to give us more capability, open the bandwidth. So we've added 2 more modes. They're based on data rates.
Eso no es un comando, Wolf.
Then doubles our bandwidth. So we're not using a coding scheme to improve our signal-to-noise ratio, which allows us to actually bring down more data. Do that streaming. When we started streaming the video, it was because we were able to open the bandwidth, which allows us to do file transfers, bring the data off the vehicle, and also do the streaming video. Well, it was simply a misconfiguration at the deep space network, where they were set up for a data rate that the
Y están hablando de eso, Ángel, perdón. Me estoy perdiendo con el chat y con el resto de las cosas.
Finally figured that out, and then we recovered. Once we got the right data rate, we recovered the return link.
Yeah, and Eric, just to add a little clarity on this one, as I understand it, Rick, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we need the spacecraft data rate, the Deep Space Network ground site data rate, and the MCC data rate all to be in the same configuration, and we got out of configuration.
Hablando que tiene que tener todos los datos en la misma configuración,
kind of some ground-to-ground
la de
coordination
la Deep Space Network y otras 2 más.
Okay. Next question is on the phone with Marcia Dunn.
Marcia Dunn, de Associated Press.
Hi, good evening. A couple of questions.
2 preguntas.
Probably for Mike or Howard. How many avionics boxes are you going to be taking from Artemis I?
¿Cuántas cajas de avionics, o sea, de los equipos de radio, van a llevar del Artemis 1 al 2? ¿Qué pasó con el video? ¿Dice se congeló?
And then secondly, for
splashdown
splashdown day, how many people and craft do you expect to be part of the recovery effort? How many people and how many ships, planes, helicopters? I'm just looking for a
¿Cuánta gente está asociada entre helicópteros, gente y todo lo demás? En el caso de la llegada, creo que preguntó, no estaba escuchando.
Right now, we're looking at 8 avionics boxes.
8 cajas de equipos de radio avionics que van a ir del 1 al 2.
Let's see, I think your other question, and maybe you could repeat the second half of your question if I don't get it exactly right, has to do with, can you repeat that one more time? You wanted additional information
any other pieces,
on what else what else we're bringing forward that's not avionics boxes, is that correct?
That's correct. What other pieces are you going to be pulling out for Artemis II?
¿Cuántas piezas van a sacar del 1 al 2, de Artemis 1 al 2?
Nelson mentioned Munich and Campos. Munich and Campos sits on a Orion seat, and so we will be using that seat for Artemis II as well. That's a non-avionics system that we will be utilizing on Artemis II, but nothing else from the spacecraft on Artemis I that we would be reusing besides those items I mentioned.
And Marcia, thank you for the question on the recovery operation. And our recovery operations lead, Melissa Jones, is not on this call, so you might want to confirm some of this with her at a later time. But
la recuperación de la nave.
We have a well-deck ship that is provided via partnership with the U.S. Navy on Naval Base San Diego. We will put about 85 NASA and industry partner personnel on the ship to support that operation, and that is above and beyond the ship's standard complement, which is a couple hundred sailors. We will have deployed from the recovery ship itself at least 4 small boats, what they call small boats. 2 of those will be what they call rigid hull inflatable boats, and then 2 of those will be kind of smaller rafts. And then we'll have 2 helicopters deployed from the
Bueno,
flight
los
deck.
botes, 2 helicópteros que van a salir del barco.
Imagery observations associated with the parachute deploy and splashdown.
Va a haber observaciones de los paracaídas, seguramente con el avión en Canberra.
From the spacecraft as it descends, things like the forward bay cover and some of the parachutes as part of the parachute deployment sequence. And then we'll have at least 1 aircraft at a higher altitude.
Bueno, ya está hablando del Canberra ahora, justamente. Para poder tener más detalles después sobre justamente la apertura de los paracaídas.
David Curley with Discovery Channel.
Discovery Channel, a ver qué pregunta el Discovery Channel. ¿Qué pregunta? Discovery Channel. David.
Sorry about that. I was having a little trouble. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
I guess this is for Howard. Quick question. What kind of data are you getting from inside the capsule in the environment, the astronauts and being
¿Qué datos están teniendo dentro de la
are the
cápsula?
temperatures right? What are you seeing so far inside?
¿Qué es lo que están viendo ahora? Eso es lo que le preguntamos nosotros en la conferencia anterior. Tenemos lectura de temperatura, de presión en la cabina, ¿no?
Certainly, what was loaded or what was in the atmosphere when we closed the hatches, what we've got, and our leakage rates are really low. I think it's like 0.03.
La composición de los gases, si hay pérdidas. Marcos, ¿qué tal? Buenas, Marcos.
Not only just what's inside the cabin, but obviously a lot of measurements we have inside the cabin relative to Munich and Campos. The radiation sensors are all being recorded, so we won't get that data from the cabin until we get back on the ground.
Vamos a tener más datos cuando esté en tierra. Ahora pregunta Bill Harvard.
Hey, thanks. I got 2 quick ones. One for Mike and one for Howard, I think. Is the Star Tracker issue you've mentioned a couple of times, is that the most significant problem you've had with Orion? Or is there anything else that's
Bueno, nos está sacando la pregunta, ¿eh?
Or maybe not worry, but required the similar level of troubleshooting. And I wasn't clear how you resolved that, or if you just decided.
Esa es la pregunta que íbamos a hacer.
We understand how it works now, and that makes it okay, or if there's something you had to do about that. And Howard, can you tell us what those 8 boxes are? I know it's probably buried in the press kit somewhere, but I can't remember what the avionics boxes are that you're going to take off Artemis I and put on Artemis II. Thanks.
Bueno, está preguntando cuáles son los equipos, esos 8 equipos que van del 1 al 2, Artemis 1 al Artemis 2.
The Star Tracker is certainly the highest visibility. When we first we had a couple issues where we took, I think, a radiation hit on the Star Tracker itself, and we also had this issue with a bit flip relative RAM where inside the box itself, it has error detection correction automatically. And I think I mentioned in the last press conference, it does when you have a radiation hit, it may flip a bit in the memory, it auto corrects itself, and it just tells you. And it's a very good system that is on a lot of deep space kinds of hardware, avionics hardware. And in this case, when it first tripped, we were getting indications that Star Tracker wasn't performing, and I think through our analysis and of course very detailed look at all the data that we got at that time, we made some decisions obviously to press forward. But it turned out that the Star Tracker was working just beautifully. It was outputting navigation data as expected. This bit trip, we found out through our our last few days, several days of hard work by the team, is that this is very anomalous behavior. Many of the Star Trackers in deep space and even geosynchronous satellites and low Earth orbit satellites have data that shows that they take these kinds of RAM upsets, and so they get auto-corrected and they log it. And so today, when we went to the MMT, we walked through all the data. We showed a lot of detailed in terms of not only from our own program, but from other programs that the Europeans have flown, from other programs that we know about from our sister programs.
Disculpen que no traduje, estaba escribiendo una nueva pregunta por si me llaman, por si me dan la opción de preguntar, estaba escribiendo una nueva pregunta. Si sigue siendo una posibilidad real la de aterrizar en la Luna el 2024 con el HLS Y segunda, si la Starship está operativa en ese momento, si Orión y el SLS serían los vehículos, considerando que Starship podría acoplarse con el Gateway.
Howard said it well. The team did a very thorough analysis of the Star Tracker random access memory bits that were being set. And this is a case where leveraging our industrial base and other missions out there, whether they're NASA missions or other missions that use this common set of avionics or very similar design to it, is helping us, and we tap that expertise. In terms of other issues that are out there, we do have one active anomaly resolution team associated with the power conditioning and distribution unit on something called the latching current limiter. It is apparently being uncommanded open, so for some reason these latching current limiters on umbilical 1, uniquely on umbilical 1, there have been a number of occurrences that are being nobody's on the ground commanding.
Magali pregunta si se destrabó Snoopy al rincón. Se movió el lugar. Lo vimos en la foto, sí.
Our anomaly resolution team is working in the background. It is not a high-level concern because we have appropriate levels of redundancy. There's 4 solar array wings, 2 of these per channel, per power channel, and we're recovering from these. We just don't quite understand what the hardware is telling us, and we're expecting an outbrief from that anomaly resolution team in the next couple of days. The other things that are out there, we've talked previously about the coolant loop 1 flow rate being erratic. We believe that there's gas in the fluid, and we're periodically seeing the flow rate drop, and then it comes back up as the gas bubble moves its way through the coolant loop. We also had what I would argue was a gift handed to us from the flight environment. We had the flight module number 1 had a reset, and that was due to a radiation hit, and it did exactly what it was designed to do. And
¿Está ahí, Maxi? ¿Contigo o Cristiano?
Reset, and the system recovered by itself, and it handled the radiation hit as it was designed. So we're again characterizing the system performance. We're learning from it. We're learning what the hardware is telling us. Some of this is unfamiliar to us in the flight environment, and we're rolling that into all the operations. So I don't know, Rick, if you have anything to add to that.
No, you've covered it well. That cross-channel restart essentially is when a computer goes down and comes back up, it gathers information from the other computers to basically get right back to where it was and get back into a sync with all the other 3 computers. So work just as it's designed.
And I'll answer the last
Gracias, Sebastián, por los saludos.
So we're returning the Orion IMUs, or inertial measuring units, the GPSRs, which is the receivers for GPS, and then the phase array antennas.
Está diciendo la cantidad de equipos, la unidad de navegación inercial, el GPS y otro equipo más que no está escuchando. No lo capturé. Para de 1 al 2.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. For Mike Sarapin, will we see the Apollo landing sites on the next lunar flyby?
¿Vamos a ver el sitio de donde aterrizó el Apolo cuando pase por la Luna?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Hassan. Rick's probably better in tune with that one, but as I understand it, we will get to see multiple Apollo landing sites.
Yeah,
Rick,
posiblemente sí.
There's a team that's actually actively making the plan, putting the plan together to support the imagery as we fly by the moon. The positive is on the return power flyby, that area will be lit, so we have the opportunity. We just got to get the vehicle in the right orientation and get the cameras going. We're going to be taking imagery, so and I don't know exactly which sites, but I know on the outbound power flyby there was 4 sites that were all in the dark, so we didn't capture them. But my expectation is the same 4 will be available this time with the proper lighting conditions.
Sí, si hay buena luz, es muy posible que sí.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking this question. 2 things I was wondering. One, can you talk a little bit more about the 2 flight rule waivers you need to do for the additional objectives and what that looks like? And then second, just thinking about the Deep Space Network, Now that you're using it with Artemis and sort of breaking in those procedures, are there thoughts about what might be necessary to improve or invest in or add to the DSN system ahead of crewed flight with Artemis? Thank you.
Yeah, Tim, thank you for the question. I'll talk about the flight rule waivers here up front. But in terms of the accomplishing what we're calling characterizing the thermal envelope,
Hola, Roxana.
is by design, it wants to fly tail to sun. That is for thermal stability of the vehicle, but also from a power production standpoint. And the vehicle, through analysis, is allowed to go up to 20 degrees in either pitch or yaw out of that perfect tail to sun orientation. So what we're doing is we're characterizing the corners of the box, 20 degrees, and doing that. And there's also
Hablando de las temperaturas y de la recuperación térmica de Orión, de la cápsula.
If we're out of attitude greater than that 20 degrees for more than 3
A ver
hours,
si mueven justamente si la recuperación térmica de estar expuesto al sol, o sea, cuánto tiempo, ¿no?
Specific to the thermal analysis requirements and the desire
Se están haciendo análisis térmicos
on that thermal envelope expansion, and that is
están tratando de expandir el envolvente de temperatura de la cápsula.
I don't know, Rick, if you have anything to add on the flight rule waivers.
No, you covered it. Okay. Well, that was for the first one. I think the second one, you going to cover that one?
I'm trying to remember.
The second one was for the solar ray constraints, yes. Right? We for the various burns that we do with Orion, we have specific attitudes or positioning that we put the solar array wings, and that's to prevent damage from plume impingement from the reaction control thrusters.
La actitud es la posición en que está colocada la cápsula en relación con la trayectoria que está siguiendo. Esta es una actitud positiva, esta es una negativa, esta es una lateral hacia un lado o hacia otro, si es que la nave se está moviendo hacia allá, ¿no?
So that's the rationale for that waiver.
Yeah, and thank you for the reminder. So that the specific constraint that we're trying to avoid is not a plume impingement or a load constraint on the solar array wing. It has to do with the radiant heating from the engine that's in proximity to the solar array wing. So those were the two waivers that were approved, and they are specific to these test conditions and specific to the objectives that were set up. These are not just what I'll call generic waivers for operations across the mission, and we did make that clear today.
Mike, would you mind? I'll jump in with a couple fine points relative to that. From a spacecraft perspective, Mike talked about the 20-20-20 degree envelope. I mean, we've already analyzed this as pre-mission. We know that we can operate in these regimes. There were some flight rule constraints relative to the two pieces, the OMZ or the main engine, and then also the star tracker was also. So I think from an overall risk perspective, that's why we talked about pressing forward with this particular objective, is because we feel like through our pre-mission analysis that we're able to operate in those boundaries. We just want to make sure in this real flight environment that we get to those corners of the boxes. So that's one piece, and that's the same for the arrays. The arrays, we've tested and certified them to be in these configurations, although we didn't nominally want to operate them in that because of what we need to do for the mission. But now as we do the flight test objectives, there's no risk with the hardware in terms of where we want to park these arrays for this test. So I just want to make sure that was clear, Mike.
Yeah, thank you for that, Howard. And then, Tim, you had a second part to your question. I'm forgetting the second part.
No worries. Thank you for the detailed explanation. I was just asking about, given sort of the work through of the process with the Deep Space Network, is there any thought to investing in, further capabilities or improving that network ahead of crewed flight when it may be more important to get that communications done quickly?
Si van a hacer algo para mejorar la red de comunicación profunda.
Are very mindful that the Deep Space Network has many customers, and Artemis is one of those.
Y la red de comunicación profunda tiene muchos clientes. Artemis es uno de ellos.
And other partnership missions out there. So as we expand the portfolio of Artemis capabilities, whether it's Gateway or the Human Landing System,
si expandimos nosotros la capacidad de Artemis,
systems, as we get further into the manifest, we are acutely aware that we need to improve the,
y si lo hacemos tenemos que mejorar las comunicaciones, el rastreo y invertir más en todo eso, justamente por la mayor cantidad de requerimientos.
Okay, next question is from Kristen Fisher with CNN.
Hi, everyone. This question is for Senator Nelson, if he's still on. If not, I guess, Mike, it might be for you. But given the fact that this mission, Artemis I, is going so well, wondering if we could get an update on when a crew may be announced for Artemis II. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Kristen. Thank you for the question. We've purposefully deferred that decision until after Artemis I is successfully complete. We want to get through a demonstration of our human transportation system before we name a crew for a number of reasons. One is
antes de nombrar una tripulación, queremos probar que este sistema es capaz de llevar gente. O sea, está hablando de determinar la misión, obviamente.
And we need to find the sweet spot relative to the training time for the crew. But once the crew is named, they're going to be highly sought after people, and there are other responsibilities for astronauts in the astronaut office, and we need to keep that in mind as well from my workload and just kind of an overall flight crew availability standpoint. And their time is precious, so we've purposely deferred that until after Artemis I. I don't have a specific date for you, but it will be after the mission.
Thank you. And our next question is from Jen Siegel.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking my question today. What will be the approximate length of the Artemis II mission? And secondly, roughly how many NASA and partner people are involved in monitoring Artemis I?
¿Cuánta gente de NASA está monitoreando Artemis I?
I'll take the mission length, Rick, and you want to take the team, and Howard, you want to talk about the size of your teams? Jim, in terms of the mission length for Artemis II, we're looking at a 10.5-day crewed flight test. So 4 astronauts will fly a 1-day highly elliptical orbit to basically shake down the life support system and perform a proximity operations demonstration with the upper stage before it is separated at a far distance from Orion. And then at the end of that 1-day high Earth orbit, Orion will essentially perform a mission completion maneuver and use the service module to perform the translunar injection maneuver and put itself on a free return trajectory about 4.5 days out and about 4.5 days back. So it'll be a little over 10 days, and that's our Artemis II plan. So, Rick, do you want to talk about your team, and Howard, do you want to talk about your teams as well?
Sure. So it's a little hard, but in the front room we have 10 flight controllers, and then for each one of those,
tenemos 10 controladores en
some have up to two.
Hablando de la cantidad de gente, pero no la cantidad de gente que está siguiendo la misión, ¿no? Y tenemos 3 turnos, y específicamente la gente del control de vuelo tenemos 60, 60.
Quite a few of those people, and I couldn't give you a number, but I'm guessing probably another 5, so 15, so we're looking around 75 people inside MCC.
Tenemos 75 adentro. Es un número más o menos aproximado, ¿no? Muy cercano.
Yeah, that's a good question, but a tough question. I think
es una pregunta buena, pero difícil.
I would estimate maybe 10 consoles
10 consolas en la misión.
Room, which is the support from an engineering perspective. You know, probably a couple people on console per 3 shifts across a day. And so you're looking at maybe 60-ish people. And then we've got some support from Europe as well. They've got some people supporting from an engineering perspective. We've also got people at the Lockheed Martin facility in Denver. So probably, somewhere in that 70 to 100, somewhere around there, depending on the day and the burn.
Dependiendo el día y el sitio, dice la gente de soporte de ingeniería.
And then, of course, as we have issues, we'll bring more people to look
Y si
at
tenemos algún tema, traemos más gente, ¿no? Para poder resolverlo más rápido, obviamente.
But somewhere around there, probably similar to what Rick's got across the board.
Yeah, and then Jim, from the mission management team standpoint, for day of launch, because we had the propulsive elements associated with the Space Launch System, we had 24 mission management team members. We've collapsed that down since then to about 14 because the rocket has largely done its job, but we do include the Space Launch System program management team in that. And then on day of launch, the SLS Engineering Support Center out of Huntsville, which is their technical reach back, had roughly 110 people.
No se puede acoplar.
And that team has largely been
La
sunset
IS
since
es
we've gotten through
la
the point of
de
transfer
Orión,
injection.
creo.
Okay, we have time for just a couple of more questions. This one is from Elisha Sowers.
Hi, thank
No,
you
dos
for taking
preguntas
my
más.
question.
Esta, y
This
luego a ver
also
si nos
would
toca
have
la
been
otra,
for
si no quedamos
Administrator
fuera.
Nelson. I know Kristen sort of asked along the same lines of what I'm going to ask, but at the top of the call, Mr. Nelson had said that the astronauts in the Artemis III lander will be, quote, the first woman and the next man, end quote, on the moon. And I may be way overanalyzing this, but is that slight departure in his phrasing significant? Because before now, it seemed possible that there could be 2 women astronauts landing on the moon. And I'm just wondering if he misspoke, or is that comment an indication that decisions have been made?
Está hablando de
Because I
si
know
en
you
vez de
said
ser
that the
una
crew
mujer y
hasn't
un
been
hombre color, no
announced
serán dos
publicly yet,
mujeres.
but have they been decided already internally?
Elisha, thank you for the question. I'm not going to get ahead of that one. We'll just have to wait and see what the decision is and who is on that crew.
Okay, and our last question for this afternoon is from Robert Perlman.
Bueno, y la última pregunta no me tocó, así que estamos fuera.
And a quick follow-up to a previous question, I think both for Rick.
A veces toca, a veces
There was
no.
mention recently in NASA's update
Hoy es de los días
about
que no toca.
Callisto being fired up, and we saw a video of, I guess, the disco or party mode. But I was wondering from a mission control perspective, as you've seen it being used, how effective of a tool is it to have the ability to query an AI aboard an uncrewed spacecraft, looking ahead to the day that maybe all 4 Orion astronauts go down to the surface and not just 2. And then just as a quick update, when you were mentioning the Apollo sites, can you just clarify in terms of the resolution that the public should expect? That are you going to be able to
Hablando de que cuando pasen Orión por arriba del sitio de aterrizaje de los Apolo, ¿podremos ver algo del tema de la resolución que van a tener? ¿Qué es lo que vamos a poder ver?
and it's just the general area? Thanks.
¿O vamos a ver el área general del mar de la tranquilidad?
With respect to the CIT, the Crew Interface Technology payload, I personally think it'll be very advantageous for the crews, probably more so when we actually leave Gateway and start going deeper into space, where the time delay between us and the ground and the crew, it's going to be problematic for us to be able to do things real time. And if they have a device on board that can answer a lot of their questions based on a database that they have, that seems like something that would be beneficial to the crew. As far as the way it's set up for Artemis I, the flight control team really we're just activating the equipment and scheduling the services at the Deep Space Network. We got to schedule a specific antenna, and then make sure it's configured properly to support the event. But as far as of all the other stuff that's going on, we're just kind of enjoying the imagery just like you guys are, but not really actively participating. I know Howard probably can give you a little bit of insight because he's participating in a couple of the events, so he can give you his perspective. I'll pause a second and see if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, I think part of this is a demonstration of the technology and really operating in the environment of where we want to be in terms of lunar orbit. And so I think we're getting really good, results and I think it's been a good collection of data so far, and the engagement has, I think, gone very well, and appreciate Rick and the flight control team helping make that possible. I think it takes some effort to do the scheduling and coordination, and I think everybody that's participated in it has seen the value, as Rick has alluded to. And I think as time will tell in terms of what is needed, I think, the demands of what the crew requires to support and operate the spacecraft and execute the mission will determine the capabilities we need. And I think these are all good things that we're planting the seeds for, and allowing us to reap those when it's time.
No
As
dijo
far as
nada.
your second question, as far as what the expectations are for the quality of the imagery of the
Bueno,
lunar
recién
or the
ahora
Apollo
hablar de la
sites
calidad
as
de
we fly
las
by.
There's a
Imágenes.
team
working it.
cuando sobrevuelen los sitios de
So I
Apolo.
don't really have a good answer for you, but I will tell you that just the imagery that you saw of the moon surface as we went by, some of that was from our optical navigation camera.
Las imágenes que vieron son del sistema de navegación,
The cameras at the end.
las cámaras del sistema de
We're not really
navegación.
going to be tracking specific ground sites as we
No
fly
vamos a
over.
estar traqueando lugares específicos de la Tierra.
Of not getting anything if you try to over-engineer it. So it'll be comparable to what you saw as we went by for the outbound powered flyby. So I apologize, but I can't give you better information than that.
Bueno, no tengo más información que esa,
Thank you all
¿no?
who tuned in and asked questions, and thank you also to our briefers today, as well as Administrator Nelson and NASA Center Director Vanessa White here at the Johnson Space
Ángel,
Center.
gracias por estar
Look
acá,
ahead at some things we have coming up. We have the distant retrograde departure burn coming up this Thursday, December 1st, but ahead of that, we're going to preview with another briefing on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Time. Don't forget, you can
Hay
also
otro
watch
briefing de
live
nuevo,
views from
dice,
Orion almost
el
any time that we
miércoles.
have signal from the spacecraft at
Así que bueno.
go.nasa.gov/Artemis Live. Some amazing views that we've had so far today, so make sure to tune in and see those. You can also read our daily blog updates at
Así que,
nasa.gov or at blogs.nasa.gov/Artemis. And of course, don't forget, you can see the latest
esto es
imagery
el
and videos
1
on our
de
Flickr
diciembre, es
account at
cuando se va de la órbita NRO.
flickr.com/photos/NASA2Explore.
Estas son las imágenes que se pueden llegar a ver
That'll wrap it up for us here today at
con,
Mission or at Johnson Space
justamente,
Center. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you
con el
again
enlace
soon.
que dejé hoy. Están increíbles esas imágenes y se pueden descargar directo. Le voy a dejar el enlace del álbum por si alguien quiere llegar a él. Se los coloco en el chat. Son imágenes de muy alta calidad. Las pueden descargar. Están muy buenas. A ver si les muestro. Tocan aquí para descargar. Miren la calidad. La imagen original 4000 por 3000 píxeles. Están realmente increíbles. Bueno, y acá preguntaban por Snoopy. Acá lo vemos. Está un poco, se ve que está enganchado en algún lado porque se ve acá la cuerdita de seguridad. Se les enredó el muñeco, la verdad. Ahí está. Vamos, lo que pasa es que a veces las mascotas pasan por los lugares menos pensados, ¿no? Es lo que uno dice. Bueno, de todas maneras, lo dejo con esto. Nos falta música, porque no hay música. Vamos a poner un poquito de música. Ahí está, ahora sí. Leo los últimos mensajes. Rubén, gracias por la transmisión, a seguir así. Rosana Chávez que se ríe, no sé de quién. Tomar medidas de seguridad, dice Albert de la Fuente, sobre la torre y lanzamiento del SLS después de los daños causados. Obviamente van a reparar los daños y van a evitar que en el próximo lanzamiento no pase. Pero falta más de un año para el próximo. Vamos a ver cuándo tenemos el próximo lanzamiento del SLS. Gracias, querido Daniel. Hasta la próxima, dice Rosana Chávez. Gracias a ti, Ro. Ana Gabriela, lo mismo. David Amengol también, ni que hablar. Bueno, no sé si me falta saludar a alguien más. Luz Aval, que andaba por ahí. Diego Narváez, hola Dani. ¿Por qué? Me encanta esta pregunta. Creo que no le he hecho nadie hasta ahora. Diego Narváez, hola Dani. ¿Por qué en varios canales que pasan imágenes de la misión no se aprecian estrellas? Es increíble. Yo no sé a veces si contestarla a las preguntas estas, ¿no? Porque le hemos contestado 2 millones de veces. Pero es porque está hecho un estudio, esto es todo mentira, entonces es por eso que no se ven estrellas, se olvidaron de ponerlas. Sinceramente, gracias a todos. Muchísimas gracias. Lo dejo con estas imágenes. A ver. Pero no hay estrellas. Tienes razón. No se ve. Se ve la luna, se ve la nave, pero no se ven las estrellas acá. Mira, no hay una sola estrella. No puedo creer que hayan hecho esto, ¿no? Increíble esta imagen de la Tierra. ¿Ah? Pero no hay una sola estrella. Tienes razón. No puedo creer cómo no la pusieron. Nos vemos pronto. Un abrazo grande. Chau, chau. Coti, teletransportame, por favor.